All right, good evening, everybody. Saturday evening update on the progress or lack thereof, depending on how you want to look at it. I feel like a lot of progress has been made, but also I feel like I've been kind of stagnant. I am, on a personal note, kind of on a work binge right now between being on call at various places, and I do have a moderate amount of travel coming up in the next few weeks. So I'm really in kind of a 5 to 6 week, I don't want to say standstill because, God, if I get a spare hour or two, I'll go out there and weld a hat channel piece in. But really, as far as making major moves, I'm kind of at a standstill. I did stop at 10 inches. We've already just, went over that. 10-inch lift, very comfortable lift. I'm happy with it overall. I really wish I could have done the 16 inches, but no regrets. No regrets. It's 10 inches. It's plenty of room. Even when I walk all the way to the edge of the bus, my head is nowhere near the ceiling, which is comfortable for me. Plus, it's not as gaudy. If you notice the roof being raised, I'm gonna fill all that front end with sheet metal that I got coming. I got to get my hands on a rivet gun. I am going to utilize the sheet metal screws. I'm going to actually reuse the original screws wherever the sheet metal is going to bite into a solid frame behind it. That's very sufficient. But anywhere I have um, sheet metal overlapping sheet metal, it's going to have to be riveted. So I am acquiring a rivet gun for that. But I mean, honestly, looking at the front of it, it's already going to look kind of gaudy as it is, for lack of a better term. So imagine 6 inches higher than that, it would just make it look more, I don't know, more swollen, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of glad in some aspects I went with the 10 inches. I did put some clear plastic up, rednecks, we call that Bisqueen. Um, those of you that are call things by their proper name, it's probably drop or whatever. But I got that in there just to kind of keep the rain and stuff out. We shouldn't have any extreme weather coming over the next couple of weeks, and that'll just kind of keep the rain and stuff deflected out. Because I do have my cockpit area, got my CB and stuff installed in there, so I want to keep the weather off of it. Uh, the sheet metal. I'm ended up going with Metal Supermarkets out of Baton Rouge. If you're seeing this from another city, Metal Supermarkets is a franchise. There's a Metal Supermarket in a lot of major cities. They've been good to me. I've used them twice already. Super, super nice people. They will take you by the hand and show you what they can do. You let them know what you need. Like, look, I'm going with 20 gauge mild steel. Some of the schoolie heads go with 18. I originally put 18 on my side window deletes, my 3 window deletes I did originally. 18 gauge, in my humble opinion, is too heavy. I mean, it's not a, you know, it's not really something you need to add armor plating to. If you have the money and you don't mind the extra weight, I mean, some people would probably even go 16. I think anything over 18 gauge is overkill. I think 20 gauge is appropriate, and a lot of designers agree with me. You may or may not agree with me, but the cost of steel has tripled since the pandemic. Metal's expensive, right? It's all precious metals now. So I was really surprised at, and by the way, doing a 6 inch lift versus, I mean, a 10-inch lift versus a 16 is going to give me less feet of steel to buy. So it is going to cost me a little bit less in the long run, less rivets, less consumables, and things like that. So I uh, I put in for my quote for all the metal, the 20 gauge, and I was honestly just kind of blown away. I mean, it's just so cheap. I was looking on the marketplace. A guy had some galvanized sheet metal for sale, and honestly, his used galvanized, and I didn't want to use galvanized anyway because, like I said, it's a pain in the ass. You got to rough it up, and I've got to paint over it anyway. If I'm getting if I'm getting metal from him, I'm gonna have to cut it myself because it's 4 feet wide. My pieces need to be 34 inches, so I can custom order this from metal supermarkets, and it comes to me the correct size. There's no trimming. I don't have to grind anything down. Certain corners, maybe have a dent in them. This is unadulterated, clean, cold rolled steel, and I think that's what I know that's what I'm going to go with. But I'm definitely glad I found those guys and those gals. They're super helpful. Um, so I'm going to get that from them and not have to do any alterations. I don't really have the equipment to properly cut this metal nice and clean. I don't have a brake to bend it or shears or anything like that. I don't do sheet metal work. So I would sit there with a cutting wheel and the crap would be, a little bit crooked here and there. If I order it pre-cut, it's going to come professionally cut, no BS. All I have to do is just put a little scuff on it and prime every sheet. I can go ahead and prime both sides of it, one side one day, one side the next day, and boom, rivet and screw that stuff up there. So what really impressed me is I was going back over my budget, and I'm going to do another budget update soon. For those of you that joined recently, I do have a budget video from a couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, that I did explaining how much all this stuff costs and just kind of what I'm going with and why. Um, but this roof raise, 10-inch roof raise from start to finish, easily $1,100. $1,100. But for the purpose of the budget for the actual uh, documenting of the numbers, I'm going to call it 15 because you have to consider consumables. I keep saying that word. I use a lot of MIG welding wire on these welds. I'm getting my son to do the welding. I'm just doing the tacking. He's the welder. I'm just the helper. So I'm utilizing, I wiped your butt, you weld my bus. That's how that works, right? So, but there's consumables. There, grinding wheels, I've gone through a bunch of those. This plastic primer, I gotta spray paint. Every time I weld these pieces in, I have to coat them in primer so they don't rust. Things that I break that I have to buy again, the electricity that I'm using, the time that I spend, the injuries I sustain. There's a whole lot of things that you're constantly having to buy or add to your tool supply that you otherwise would not be doing. So materials alone, probably 700-800 bucks. I just say about 11 just to be safe, because every now and then you make a run to the hardware store and you need, some extra all thread or some extra nuts and bolts. And those little things add up. They do. That's why I want to be fair with this budget. I don't want to brag about how cheap it is. So I'm going to put my intermediate estimate. I'm almost got everything I need for the raise is going to be $1,500. So I went from a factory height bus to a 10-inch roof raise for 1,500. It was really less than 15, but just to be safe, $1,500. That's excellent. If you pay a professional to do it, and I recommend you pay a professional to do it because it sucks. It's uh, it's a monumental task, like I've said a bunch of times. If you've got the right tools, those of you that drive Jeeps, it's like those big ass 3 foot tall Jeep jacks, those farm jacks, things like that. That's really going to be your friend. I really wasn't working with that kind of material. So when I got to 10 inches and it started getting a little squirrely on me, I was like, you know what, I'm happy with 10 inches. So if you've got the right equipment, you definitely want to take your time and not scrimp on the right equipment. But so where was I? So about $1,500 from start to finish. Now I put in hours upon hours upon hours on it too. I can't discount that enough. This build is a budget build, but what you do not spend in paper, you make up for in sweat, probably two or three fold. So again, don't think you're just gonna scrounge together $8 or $10,000 and build one of these things. Um, you're gonna put a lot of sweat and blood in it. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I got blood on the floor all in this bus just from slicing my fingers, scuffing my elbow on the wall. Make sure your tetanus shot's up to date, right? That's the nurse in me coming out. So 10 inches for about $1,500. That's about what my final cost was. That is factoring in the rivet gun that I'm going to go buy. and the rivets. And again, I'm going to reuse the metal screws, the stock metal screws that were originally in the sheet metal. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. I'm going to reuse those anywhere I'm biting into structural components, but anywhere I have sheet metal overlapping. I'll give you an example. On the front crown of the bus up here, the piece of sheet metal that I'm going to get is going to go underneath here a couple of inches, and it's going to go on the outside of here. All of this is going to be riveted. That's going to be about 150, 175 rivets across here because it's not really biting to anything structural. So that includes buying all of that. And I'll, when I'm done, I'll have a rivet gun. Not that I'll probably ever use a rivet gun ever again. That's what I mean when I say consumables. You buy a bunch of shit that maybe you would have bought otherwise, but probably not. I mean, you make these trips to the hardware, and you're just constantly spending 15 here, 40 here, 75 here. You're going on Amazon, ordering, so you have to consider those costs. So just fair warning, you're really just going to get a few small BS updates over the next few weeks, just a random snapshot here and there. But more is coming probably this spring. But right now, y'all, we are balls to the wall. By the way, balls to the wall is not a reference to anything lewd or sexual. Just a quick little history lesson. Balls to the wall refers to, I believe, the B-25 Liberator and the B-29 bombers in World War II. Those bombers were heavy and they had four piston engines. So when the pilots would take off max power, there's four sticks, one for each engine, the throttle, and they have a ball on top of them. So the pilot and co-pilot would put both their hands on it and they would push all the way until the balls hit the wall. So when something is balls to the wall, that means it's full throttle. So it's nothing you can't say in front of the kids. As a matter of fact, teach your kids that. They need to know military history. Anywho, more to follow. More to follow. Skin's gonna look good on there.